The wind howled through the narrow streets of Ridgewood, carrying with it whispers of a place lost to time. It was the autumn of 1997, and I was a restless teenager seeking adventure in the mundane town I called home. Ridgewood had little to offer old bookstores, creaky diners, and the occasional urban legend passed down by bored townsfolk. But one story always stood out, the tale of the forgotten carnival. They said it appeared once every 25 years, rising from the fog like a mirage, only to vanish before dawn. People who dared to enter never returned, or so the stories went. Most dismissed it as a spooky bedtime tale, but something about it fascinated me. I had always been drawn to the mysterious, the unexplainable. It was late October when I first saw the carnival. I had been walking home after a late-night argument with my parents, the crisp air biting at my cheeks. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows on the pavement, and the familiar sounds of Ridgewood were drowned out by something strange music. A haunting melody floated through the air, carried by the wind. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard, a mix of tinkling piano keys and distant laughter. I followed the sound, my curiosity outweighing my fear, and soon found myself standing before a sight that took my breath away. The carnival stretched out before me, its vibrant colors and glowing lights cutting through the night like a beacon. Ferris wheels spun slowly against the starless sky, and striped tents dotted the landscape, their flaps swaying in the breeze. The air was thick with the smell of caramel and popcorn, yet there was something off. The place felt alive, pulsating with an energy that made my skin crawl. There was no one around, no ticket booth, no crowds, just me and the music, which seemed to call my name. Against my better judgment, I stepped through the gates. The moment I entered, the world seemed to shift. The sounds of Ridgewood faded entirely, replaced by the hum of the carnival. I wandered past booths lined with old-fashioned games, ring tosses, dart throws, and fortune-telling machines. At one booth, a line of porcelain dolls stared back at me, their glassy eyes almost lifelike. "Welcome," a voice said, startling me. I turned to see a man standing behind a cotton candy cart. He was tall and thin, dressed in a crimson suit that looked as though it belonged in another era. His face was pale, almost waxy, and his smile was unnervingly wide. "First time at the Forgotten Carnival?" he asked, his voice smooth and inviting. I nodded, my throat dry. "What is this place?" He chuckled, a low, hollow sound. "A place where dreams come to life and secrets are laid bare. Everyone finds what they're looking for here, if they're brave enough." Before I could respond, he handed me a ticket golden and shimmering in the dim light. "Enjoy your stay," he said, tipping his hat. I took the ticket hesitantly and continued walking. The deeper I ventured into the carnival, the stranger things became. The rides moved without operators, the games seemed to play themselves, and shadows danced where there shouldn't have been any light. I stopped at a carousel, its horses frozen mid-gallop. A single light bulb flickered above it, casting eerie shadows on the ride's painted surface. As I reached out to touch one of the horses, the music changed. It became slower, darker, and the laughter that accompanied it sounded wrong. Something was watching me. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. The carousel creaked to life, its horses moving in jerky, unnatural motions. The world around me began to spin, and for a moment I thought I heard voices, whispers of warnings, pleas for help. I stumbled back, my heart racing. Whatever this carnival was, it wasn't just a place of fun and games, it was a trap. I stumbled away from the carousel, the golden ticket still clutched tightly in my hand. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to run back through the gates and never look back. But when I turned to retrace my steps, the entrance was gone. The glowing archway had vanished, replaced by a thick wall of fog. Panic clawed at my chest, but I forced myself to breathe. "It's just a carnival," I muttered under my breath. Though the words sounded hollow even to me, there had to be a way out. I just had to find it. As I walked deeper into the carnival, I noticed something strange. The vibrant colors of the tents and rides seemed to dim, their once bright hues fading into muted shades of gray. The cheerful music grew more discordant, each note tinged with unease, and the shadows were moving. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then I saw them clearly. Shapes darted between the tents just out of sight. They were quick, almost too quick to track, but I caught glimpses, long limbs, empty faces, eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. "Who's there?" I called, my voice trembling. No response, only the faint sound of footsteps echoing in the distance. I approached another tent, its striped canvas rippling as if something were moving inside. The sign above the entrance read, "House of Mirrors." Against my better judgment, I stepped inside, drawn by a strange compulsion I couldn't explain. The interior was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from the mirrors that lined the walls. Each one reflected a distorted version of myself, taller, shorter, thinner, whiter. But as I moved deeper into the maze, the reflections began to change. They weren't me anymore. One mirror showed a version of me as a child, clutching a stuffed animal and crying. Another reflected me as an adult, older and weathered, with lines of sorrow etched into my face. The reflections seemed to move independently, their eyes following me as I walked. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The mirrors didn't answer, but the air around me grew heavy. One reflection stepped forward, pressing its hand against the glass. It was me, or rather, it was a version of me wearing a look of pure despair. "You shouldn't be here," it said, its voice a warped echo of my own. "They'll take you if you stay." "Who?" I asked, backing away. Before it could answer, the mirror shattered, the sound piercing through the silence. Shards of glass flew through the air, but instead of falling to the ground, they hung suspended, glittering like stars. I ran. Bursting out of the tent, I found myself in the middle of the carnival's main square. The fog was thicker now, swirling around the rides and booths like a living thing. The shadows that had been darting around the edges of my vision were closer now, their forms more defined. They weren't human. Tall and spindly, with elongated limbs and faces that seemed to melt and shift like wax, the creatures moved with a deliberate, predatory grace. They circled me slowly, their glowing eyes fixed on me. "Why are you here?" one of them rasped, its voice like dry leaves. "I don't know," I stammered, clutching the golden ticket. "I just followed the music." The creature tilted its head as if considering my answer. Then it lunged forward, its hand reaching for the ticket. "No!" I shouted, instinctively pulling it back. The creature recoiled, hissing like a snake. The others shrank away as well, their glowing eyes narrowing. The ticket, I realized, was more than just a pass, it was my protection. But for how long? I looked around desperately, searching for some clue, some way to escape. My eyes landed on a towering Ferris wheel at the edge of the carnival. Its lights flickered weakly, but it stood out against the swirling fog like a beacon. The creatures were closing in, their movements slow but deliberate. Clutching the ticket, I sprinted toward the Ferris wheel, the sound of their footsteps pounding behind me. The Ferris wheel loomed closer, its rusted metal groaning in the wind. As I reached it, I saw a figure standing by the control panel, a young girl in a tattered dress, her hair hanging in loose, messy curls. "Please," I gasped, "help me." The girl turned slowly, her eyes wide and unblinking. She said nothing, but she pointed to the Ferris wheel's highest carriage. I didn't question her. Scrambling onto the platform, I climbed into the carriage just as the creatures reached the base of the Ferris wheel. They hissed and snarled, but they didn't follow. The girl pulled a lever, and the Ferris wheel began to turn, lifting me higher and higher above the carnival. As I ascended, the fog began to clear, revealing a sprawling landscape of decay and ruin. The carnival was dying. As the Ferris wheel creaked higher into the air, the carnival below transformed. What had once been a dazzling array of lights and colors now resembled a graveyard of forgotten dreams. The vibrant tents collapsed into heaps of tattered fabric, the rides rusted and frozen in place, and the glowing bulbs shattered, plunging the landscape into darkness. The creatures, however, didn't vanish. They gathered at the base of the Ferris wheel, staring up at me with eyes that burned like dying embers. "Why aren't they following me?" I murmured aloud. The girl by the controls remained silent, her figure barely visible through the thinning fog. Her stillness was unnerving, but I had no time to question it. I clutched the golden ticket tightly, feeling its warmth pulse against my palm. Whatever magic it held, it was the only thing keeping me safe. As the Ferris wheel reached its peak, a strange sensation washed over me. The air grew thin, charged with an energy that made my skin tingle. Suddenly, a voice soft and melodic filled the air, cutting through the eerie silence. "You must decide," it said, echoing around me. "Decide what?" I called out, my voice trembling. The voice didn't answer, but the golden ticket in my hand began to glow brighter. It felt heavier now, almost alive, and I realized it was pulling me, guiding me to something. Below, the creatures were restless, their clawed hands stretching toward me as if they could drag me down with sheer will. The girl by the controls finally spoke, her voice carrying easily despite the distance. "The ticket is your key," she said, "but it comes with a price." "A price?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "What kind of price?" She didn't respond. Instead, she pointed to a small platform at the very top of the Ferris wheel. The ticket tugged harder now, pulling me toward it. I climbed out of the carriage cautiously, the metal platform swaying beneath my feet. On the platform was a small box, intricately carved and glowing faintly with the same golden hue as the ticket. I reached for it hesitantly, and as my fingers brushed against its surface, the whispers began. They weren't just voices, they were memories. I saw glimpses of people who had come to the carnival before me. A woman searching for her lost son, a man desperate to escape his past, a child longing for a world of magic. Each of them had held a golden ticket. Each of them had made a choice, and each of them had paid the price. "You can leave," the voice said again, softer now, "or you can stay." "Stay?" I whispered, looking down at the crumbling carnival. The creatures were no longer at the base of the Ferris wheel. They were climbing it now, their long limbs moving with unnatural speed. "If you stay," the voice continued, "you will become part of this place, a guardian of its secrets. But if you leave, you will never find your way back here again." I thought of my life in Ridgewood, the monotony, the arguments, the aching feeling that I didn't belong. Here, in this strange and terrible place, I had found something that felt significant. But was it worth giving up everything I'd ever known? The creatures were closer now, their gnarled hands reaching for me. I had to decide. With trembling hands, I placed the ticket into the slot on the box. For a moment, everything went still. The carnival, the creatures, even the wind, it all stopped. Then the box opened and a blinding light engulfed me. When I awoke, I was standing at the edge of Ridgewood, the golden ticket gone from my hand. The carnival was nowhere in sight, just an empty field blanketed in morning mist. But something was different. I could feel it in my bones, in the rhythm of my heart. I wasn't the same person who had walked into the forgotten carnival that night, and deep down, I knew the carnival wasn't gone. It was waiting for the next seeker, for the next choice. As I turned to leave, I saw a faint shimmer in the distance, a flicker of golden light. The carnival's melody played faintly on the wind, a haunting reminder of the choice I had made. And for the briefest moment, I thought I saw the girl, standing in the fog, her eyes watching me as I disappeared into the dawn.